What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel.
Georgia, Florida, go at it this Saturday. Of course, the Gators have lost the one game at LSU, 42-28. Georgia with an unexpected loss as the preseason overwhelming favorite in the SEC East with a one loss against South Carolina a couple weeks ago at home, which has blemished their record. So we've got a couple of one-loss teams that will most likely, the winner will own the SEC Eastern Division. Which program out of these two? They come from very different places in regards to expectations to a certain extent. And what Kirby Smart has accomplished in Athens is pretty obvious. National championship game appearance 2 years ago after the SEC crown was won over Auburn, and then all the expectations that came crashing down in the final 5 minutes against Alabama and then against Texas in the Sugar Bowl. So which program between Florida and Dan Mullen, Georgia and Kirby Smart, which program needs this win more? Is it Georgia? Is it Florida? So again, the Bulldogs, after years and years of frustration under Mark Richt, in which they were consistently a top 10 to 15 team in the nation, track the Mark Richt era. I think it's better than most people remember. He finished in the top 10 8 times out of 15 years, so more than half the time Georgia finished in the top 10, but there were always those disappointing losses that prevented them from vying for serious national championship contention, aside from 3 seasons in particular, and the most notable and the most recent 2012, in which they came one play or 1 second or 4 yards away from winning the SEC and going to the BCS national championship game against Notre Dame. So Georgia fans have been wanting this desperately for so long, and they came oh so close in 2012, and then they came even closer in 2017. So much expected of this program. The recruiting has been off the charts good, almost historically good over the past couple of years under Kirby Smart after he made that one initial adjustment year at 8-5. Then they took off, of course, in 2017, and all seemed to be well in Athens. Well, here we are after the disappointing overtime loss to Alabama, the end of last season, which culminated with 2 losses against Alabama and Texas, and now a season which appears to be on the brink in terms of the expectations being met, with a difficult assignment against Florida, a difficult November for Georgia, and already having shown some weakness and some vulnerability and deficiencies in losing at home against South Carolina. So you've got Georgia's claim, the Georgia side, the Georgia expectations, and you also have Florida. Florida, of course, coming through a dry spell under Will Muschamp and then Jim McElwain. Even though they won the SEC East twice, they backed in to the title game in Atlanta. Dan Mullen takes over. He seems to be a perfect fit for this program. He knows the culture. He knows the recruiting footprint. He knows the administration. He knows the athletic landscape. He's been there. He's coached. He's been there under the best of circumstances under Urban Meyer and saw a championship winning program at Florida in the late 2000s. So he comes back home, and pretty much everything Dan Mullen has done to date has been right in line with what Florida fans have expected in building back to an elite level. The recruiting class that he walked in on and had to save to a certain extent, he pulled together and did a fine job after he was hired. Then he goes out, and generally the games that they lost were understandable in 2018. The loss to Missouri was probably the outlier that seemed a bit disappointing, that they were unprepared in losing, I think, 33-17 to Missouri. But other than that, pretty much did what you would expect the highest of expectations, reasonable expectations, would be for Dan Mullen and Florida in 2018 as they finished 10-3, beat their rival at the end of the year, Florida State, mauled Michigan in the Peach Bowl, finished in the top 10, and set themselves up for what could be a shot at Georgia. Most people, though, including myself, thought maybe they're not quite ready for Georgia this year. But now we've got a situation where Georgia has shown some deficiencies. The Notre Dame team that Georgia beat by 1 score in a game in which they were decidedly the better team, but still could never separate from Notre Dame at home with all that home cooking working for them. And Florida just seemingly getting better and better and better, despite the loss to LSU, which might be the best team in the country, that the Florida Gators now set themselves up in a place where they're trying to reclaim dominance in the SEC. They're a good team. They're a good program. We know who they are. They've got an identity. They've got a coach who's won with lesser facilities, lesser talent, lesser resources at Mississippi State. So it's Georgia and it's Florida, and it's most likely for the SEC Eastern Division. And we'll put a spin on that one, though, in just a second as well. Florida, Georgia this Saturday. Which program needs it more?